going to start with an apology. I did think there were points for the longest title. That was actually our working title. I'm not even going to read it because I did not get that right in practice once. So what this is about how we took some of our gaming technologies and applied them to non-games markets and kind of a high-level talk about that generally to maybe inspire you to do something similar. So moving on to a bio slide. No one else did a bio slide, but I'll do one. There's a point to this. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Doug Wolff. I'm Canadian, which is kind of obvious. Thank you. I came to Teesside University in 2001, did a master's degree, joined Eutechnyx in 2006. Again, for those of you who don't know us, we're a local company just down the road, over 25 years of experience, mainly driving games in the last 17 years, so we're specialists in that area. And you can see my journey through the sort of development side was from programming, from tech, into production and executive production. And the bit I wanted to show on that was, if you look down, these aren't all the titles I worked on, these are some of them, but down at that end, that was work for hire for publishers where they came with IP, and we sort of presented that back to them in some kind of game concept. And then in the middle, we started to move into, we're the worldwide rights holder for NASCAR. Auto Club Revolution is a free-to-play game where we started going direct to the consumer. Which I know a lot of you are now. And then sort of the last sort of core game project I worked on, this was in 2012, was an actual experience with BMW inside of Auto Club Revolution. And that was kind of a shift that we kind of see paralleled across the industry where we're opening up to new kinds of ideas. So this kind of cycle is what we're typically used to. You're a game developer, you go off to a game publisher, get your game funded, and then that is how you engage with the gamer. As I mentioned, a lot of us now are using app stores or using Steam to sort of go directly to the gamer. But we kind of live in this kind of cycle where we go through and we build up expertise in developing games. In our case, it's driving games, so we're building up our expertise in driving physics, in modeling the cars mathematically, in building cars. So we built a Chinese team that makes cars for video games at a very good rate, at a very high quality level. And we're building up all this expertise. And then kind of out of the blue, in 2012, we get this opportunity in automotive retail where they're starting to look at the value that we've created here and how they might apply it. So what this was about was a car manufacturer who was really good at building physical cars, being very terrible at building virtual cars and giving them to their audience. So their configurator was worse than what you would see on a PS3. So we kind of offered to sort of give our services in that area, and that's kind of the project that evolved. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that so you have some specific context. But again, the talk would have been called Zero Light Virtual Showroom, and it would have been really easy to say if that's what I wanted to talk about, but that's not. So I'll just give you a little bit of information behind it. Those aren't models, by the way, surprisingly. Those are two of our actual developers in a candid shot that we've created here. So what it was this manufacturer had a need. They were doing massive expansion in Asia, and they had inner-city showrooms with limited floor space. So, I mean, you could get maybe 2 or 3 vehicles in here into one of these maximums. So the idea was, pull out one of the vehicles, put in a giant format screen with some kind of configurator, make sure the hardware footprint doesn't cost more than it costs them to have that vehicle there in the first place, and then have the entire catalog of vehicles in some kind of representational format that you can go and do the whole configuration journey, order the car, know exactly what you're getting, and then that gets shipped to you to order. And that was a successful project. It's rolled out in pilot with a couple of manufacturers. We have ongoing work with other manufacturers, and it's quite a popular item. So I'm not talking about Zero Light specifically. I'm talking about this as a concept in general. So I wanted to draw another parallel. So having to do with Iron Man, which we have nothing to do with Iron Man. I'm not Iron Man. That's not going to be some awesome revelation that I do. So 2008, Marvel launches Iron Man as a franchise, or attempts to launch it as a movie franchise, right? Iron Man at this point, second-tier hero. I mean, he's massively risen in popularity in the last 5 to 7 years because of the films, by and large. Bit of a chancy kind of franchise to launch, but it was a successful and enjoyable film. But I want to sort of relate, what did the game spectrum look like this? How were games asked to sort of, connect with the Iron Man brand at this point? So Iron Man 1, your full raft of console titles. At that time, PS2 was still a viable platform, so there was a PS2 version as well. Pretty much standard across the board. A couple years later, Iron Man 2. a far inferior film, but still similar amount of games. Again, it's targeted at the platforms that were out at the time. You notice like a little bit of mobile creeping in there. So last year, Iron Man 3. Where's all the console titles? There was a single mobile endless runner type game. And you could say that it's because of the general quality of the previous titles. I like movie tie-in games. I don't mind playing them. The Iron Man game was, the first one was kind of all right. You got to fly around and pretend you were Iron Man. But we've seen years and years and years of terrible movie tie-ins that kept being made. So what was the difference? What was the turning point? And there was something that was kind of rolled out around Iron Man 3, and it was an experience called Become Iron Man. I actually wasn't aware that it was here in Newcastle, otherwise I would have totally gone to this. But what it was you could stand in front of like a big screen, they had to connect, and I think they had another camera, and you know, it would scan your body, and you kind of appear on the screen like this guy does, and you go, and the Iron Man suit would build on you, and eventually it'd be fully assembled, and then you'd be able to slightly float off the ground and shoot things. And it was designed to be a 5 to 10 minute experience, high consumer engagement to build, you know, lines and crowds at shopping malls and high traffic areas. But the point I'm trying to make with this is, now I don't know who actually developed this. I don't know if it was a games company or I don't know if it was a marketing agency, but this is some kind of core games work that we could do a great job at presenting with our skill set. And it's a kind of a different spin on just the straight linear thinking of there is this brand and maybe I should make a game for them. So I'm going to relate this back to our specific experiences. So how did we connect that yellow arrow, or orange arrow, from a game developer to automotive retail? So we created at the time it was a project which became a division, which is called Zero Light, which is also the name of our technology, which is just automotive visualization. And that was sort of how we sort of built a business structure around this to sort of move ourselves into a non-game space. So I'm going to just quickly go through a couple of the lessons we learned while we actually did it, and then move on to sort of some general inspirational ideas, hopefully, to get people thinking about this. So the first experience we have when you engage with a big brand, you know, you go in there and you go, hey, giant car manufacturer, or hey, giant IT company that wants to present this, is they have no idea what it is you do. Like, first of all, the question is this a movie I'm seeing like Toy Story? I get that like 6 or 7 times. I'm like, no, it's like real time, it's interactive 3D. Oh, it's 3D, so where are the glasses? Well, no, it's not that kind of 3D, but it could be that kind of 3D. They're like, your cars look really, really good. I've actually had someone say this to me. It's because they're 8 megapixels. I was like, I guess, I mean, if you count the, never mind. But what you have to do is you have to sort of embark on this sort of educational program with them. And it happens the other way around, because at the same time, they're coming into the meeting with all these acronyms, and they're like, have you filled up a CPJ form? And then we got to get the BRI on this, and I'm like, I don't even know what any of these things mean. So we had this sort of like common language problem that we had to kind of overcome. And that kind of led to this corporate acclimatization thing, because we're kind of jeans and t-shirt people, and they're kind of suits and ties people, and you kind of have to meet them halfway. People make fun of me. These are my visiting shoes. When I visit a client, I have these shoes or better on. I don't wear these to the studio. But it's cool. You kind of get away with it because you're creative, but you kind of have to make them feel comfortable too, that they didn't, you know, get a bunch of people off the street and to like pitch them this, you know, potentially really expensive project. But by the same token, you're kind of teaching them, and you're learning, and there's like new expertise that starts to exchange. It becomes really kind of empowering when you're kind of breaking these people down, and people are going to you, oh, you know, I saw something the other day, and I think it was only running at 30 frames per second. And I was like, what, you can spot that now? That's amazing, because I've been trying to explain to you why that's important for like we sell on 60 frames a second a lot, and people have no idea what that means. One of the structures they try and present around you is this idea of project management. So as games developers, I don't care how much project management you do not do nearly as much project management as any of these big corporates do to like, I don't know, like change like an icon on their website. I'm making fun, but I'm trying not to be deriding on this, because it actually is quite good. Because they use bigger project management systems, they formalize procedures. Even if they use Scrum, they do it to a higher level of documentation. We've had situations where they've started to use Scrum, and they brought in external consultants just to run the Scrum. They have no sector knowledge of the product or the service or what we're trying to do, and they're just there to make sure we follow Scrum correctly and document everything. But that kind of goes both ways, because we both want to get to the same end goal. We both want a robust, exciting project that, provides an experience for their users, or customers, as they would probably refer to them as. And even though they're going this way, you find there's actually a lot of value in some of those procedures and processes, because when something does go wrong or you have to dig into something, there's really good paper trails, and we kind of fly by the seat of our pants sometimes, and we don't have that level of reporting. And it's actually really good. I'm making fun of it because it's different. I'm not making fun of it because it isn't valuable, and we've actually learned a lot about that. So, one of the things that you think about first when you try to conceive of commercially taking your game experience to a brand is it's just gamification, right? So gamification, that's got to be dead now, right? Like as a concept of, if you browse all the pages on my website, you'll get a voucher for 5% off a pair of pants. That's and achievement points and all that kind of stuff. The sort of direct stuff is kind of not what they're looking for anymore. That was something that they were kind of into maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, but they've moved beyond that, the big brands. What they want is they want enrichment of their brand presented in some way using a compelling interactive experience. And we make compelling interactive experiences all the time. We call them games. But they don't necessarily have that same language. One of the things that took a little bit, especially with our designers getting sort of their heads around, was that, the concept that you could somehow fail a configuration in a virtual showroom was probably not like a good thing to have. There are no win conditions. There are no failure conditions. There's no narrative. There's no element of skill. Anything that you put in between them as a barrier is going to freak out the sort of customer in a large way. So they try and avoid that. But you still need all that great user experience. You still need all that great design to make it intuitive and exciting and have that feel of a game, because that's what they really want from you, and that's the value that they think you're going to be able to add. So we're still learning what's accessible and acceptable to these audiences, and it will totally depend on which brand. So even within the automotive space, there are brands that are targeted towards older people, there's brands that are targeted towards younger people, and all of that affects how you actually lay out that experience and how you build the product for them. So a little bit about the commercials of this, because I think, it's all great for me to come up here and say, oh, there's all these opportunities, but the next question, if I do get to questions, will be like, where are they? How do I find them? And I'm not going to lie to you, it's kind of difficult, because it's nobody's job, or it's very few people that we've ever met, job to go buy a virtual showroom. They don't know that exists. It's disruptive. It's not in a box. So if I'm a big automotive, I know I need to have a website, so I'll go and go, someone can provide me a website. I need to provide an SAP system of some kind to handle. I need some CAD systems to design new cars. I might need some industrial databases for various things. And I can buy one of those boxes, I can put it out to tender, 5 people pitch, and then we decide who's the best. For a virtual showroom, that doesn't exist. Well, maybe 1 or 2 savvy manufacturers are up to that, but not by and large, that doesn't exist. So you find what you have to do is you have to go meet people generally, you have to go to the places they're at, and educate them about the possibilities of your technology. And then suddenly, you find that people are engaged and are getting interested, and they find it somebody's role to go and actually buy that for them. And then you find that that's quite an interesting kind of development where they go, we didn't know we needed this, but now we got a guy in charge of getting this for us. By the way, can you do it for us? And you got to realize that everybody's probably doing this for the first time, even in other brands. So I'm specifically talking about virtual showrooms here because that's what we do. But it could be something you're doing with candy bars. It could be something you're doing with laundry detergent. It doesn't matter. They're probably doing this type of engagement and enrichment of their brand for the first time. So because we're rolling into lunch, generally inspirational statements about the fact that we make magic every day, but sometimes we forget about it. We're an insular industry. We put our heads down. We make the sequel better than the previous version, and that's what we concentrate on. But to people who maybe make products that take longer to develop in terms of the life cycle of rollout, or they're more complex to assemble in terms of logistically creating something like an automobile, what we do is magic. It's inherently interesting to them. They love talking to us. They're very excited. And it all starts with, yeah, can you recommend some games for my kid or something? But it all moves on to, like, how do you actually do that? How does that actually work? And to them, it's witchcraft. And it's fantastic to be in that position when you go outside of our own industry sometimes. And we can genuinely add value to these other sectors. So I guess the takeaway is we already realize it's a global gaming stage. We already realize that we have to sell to many markets. We have to appeal to sort of the world as a whole now with our products. But what I'm kind of proposing is that we're actually now at the cusp of a global digital stage, and we are best placed against web agencies, against small app developers, to go in and get some of that really, really lucrative and interesting and exciting work that is happening because they want their brands to experience something at a larger level. So, you know, we work hard. Hard work's never a problem for the games industry. I'm pretty sure we work harder than almost anybody, except for maybe like, you know, doctors or something in ERs, based on like what I've seen in ER. I know, and a couple of like BBC documentaries. But you got to have the confidence to go out and realize that we can solve these problems for them. And you can still continue making games as your primary revenue stream, or like use this as a supplementary revenue stream to let you experiment more and try new things. I mean, I kind of jokingly refer to it constantly as like the idea of selling straight to the consumer is buying lottery tickets. It's not really like buying lottery tickets, but basically we're all trying to craft a hit or trying to craft something that resonates with somebody to an audience large enough that kind of kicks it off. But you know, maybe if you started to look for this type of work, you might find that that allows you to do some of the other stuff you really want to do, or maybe take bigger chances with that. So I know everybody's hungry, so I'm going to put up the closing slide. That's my email address. I'm happy to take questions, and you can email me at any time about anything.
What a fascinating talk. Thank you. We have time for 2 questions.
We're doing something similar ourselves. When you first engaged with the car company, did they commission you to go straight into the full virtual showroom, or did they want a prototype first because they were uncertain whether it would work?
No, to be honest with you, it was definitely the prototype and trying to determine it. It's actually a really cool concept, which we're not super familiar with, where they will pay you to make the prototype. Where we've been making demos off our own backs for years, and they're like, they're going to pay us for this? Like, because we would just do this to try and win the work. So, but you find they dip their toe in. One of the reasons why all the project management infrastructure is there is because they want to have sort of gates and out clauses and approvals because they're not sure it's going to work. And, you know, when you talk about a global rollout of something, if you're going to every showroom, you know, you're talking about, you know, millions and millions of pounds of budget that are potentially rolling out, far more potentially than the revenue of loads of games. So they want to be sure by the time they go. So they're going to go proof of concept, maybe prototype, maybe pilot, and then maybe a rollout plan. And you kind of need to make sure that you're keeping pace the whole way. And they're going to have to ramp up too. So they're going to have the infrastructure by the time they go wide that, you know, they know that if it breaks, they're not calling me. I'm not going to solve it. There has to be a help desk that sends them a new version of code or a machine or something. That was a long answer to a short question.
Great. Last question from you.
Hi, yes. Obviously with games branching out so much in company size, where do you see project management in the future? Say, indie games and recent news of Ken Levine's downsizing as well. Where do you see that in terms of project managers' perspective of roles?
I think the problem is people tend to look at project management as kind of like this general discipline, and it really isn't. What it is working with the team size and working with the project size that's appropriate. So the reason why they have crazy project management when we work with a big corporate is because, to put in this perspective, when we used to pitch to a publisher, you'd pitch to somebody at the publisher who maybe went up a couple levels of management, but it was kind of a straight line there to get maybe your game signed and your game commissioned. At a big automotive company, if somebody wants it, they'll have to get buy-in from their manager or whatever, but those people there are not responsible for purchasing anything. They don't purchase their own pens, their own paper. That goes to a purchasing department that's bigger than your company. And you have to navigate through them to get the deal done. That takes 6 months. But that's why there's so much project management around it. I think there's still lots of call for really agile, Scrum-based approaches on small projects. These guys love running Scrum, but they don't run Scrum. They think they're running Scrum. They're going, oh, we're agile. Yeah. Here, we're agile. Can we write loads of documentation? I was like, well, yeah. Project management is going to match the project, and it's going to match the team. And that means it's going to be big, it's going to be small. But I think the key is you got to make sure that you have a process that you stick to and it's formalized for what you're going to do. And that could be really, really informal, but you have to be formal about being informal or formal about being formal. That's great to end on.
Yeah, and that is a great time to break. Thank you so much, Doug.